Alright guys, so here it is, the Mazda RX8 with the F136 engine swap. It's finally driving on the road. I wouldn't say it's quite done yet, but it's definitely buttoned up and I can take it up and down the street. We'll start at the interior. Shifter location, I mean this is in first gear now, but I mean it's pretty much in the same exact spot as the factory, maybe an inch or two forward. Doubled in, touch screen radio here, just an Android unit. This AEM air to fuel ratio in the vent. Real cool thing that I made is this key. I got a Ferrari replica key and I made it myself. Nice little feature. This is the F136 dry sump. So it's the F136S out of a Maserati Quattroporte. This is a 4.2 liter V8. Makes about 400 horsepower or so. So I made this box. This holds the factory Mazda computers with the power steering module as well. And then we have a ECU Masters EMU black standalone unit right there. And lines for the fuel. LS style 92 millimeter throttle body. Cable driven. This is not an electronic throttle like the engine initially came with. I couldn't get it to work well, and it was just too much of a liability to drive it down the road, not knowing that it may just stop functioning at any time. And then here we have the Mazda crank shaft, but they don't really have a crankshaft, but the timing wheel. We had to retrofit that in order to get the fuel pump to work, and then everything else works exactly the same. This is the ABS module, just moved out of the way with the new bracket. And then the factory Mazda fuse box. We still have AC. These are all the AC lines. Had to weld up, so this car does have AC right there. And yeah, that's pretty much it for modifications. The last time we left off on this series, the car wouldn't start and I couldn't really figure out the issue. I was trying to use the Maserati ECU. I had the immobilizer removed and in theory it should have just worked fine. I couldn't get it to work, so I'm pretty sure it was just the immobilizer unit. Maybe I didn't do it right. The ECU had power going in, but nothing happened. So I'm not sure if it was the immobilizer system or what, but that was the reason I ditched it and just went with a standalone unit. I picked the ECU Masters EMU Black, and specifically just because it's just a better, how do I put it? It is a low risk entry ECU, meaning is what, $1,000 or so, and then you have like $200 in miscellaneous wiring harness bits if you can't reuse your own engine harness. So basically I just wanted a low cost option in case this thing didn't work, but it did work, so that's great. I had issues with the drive-by-wire. It didn't really work. It would work for a little bit and then it just started slowly. I'll put in some clips here, but basically it just started vibrating. I did absolutely everything. I was on phone with ECU Masters tech support team. Pretty much it didn't work, and I had to ditch that idea just for safety reasons and go old-fashioned with a cabled throttle for now. I'm just getting running and driving. Another issue with the ECU Masters is the wideband sensor. It just wouldn't read the sensor. I went through 3 different sensors. We used a 4.2 and 4.9 sensors. Again, went through all their different data online on their tutorials and troubleshooting guides, and still didn't get it to work. And without that, you can't tune the engine, so it's basically useless. So what I ended up doing is actually just wiring in an AEM wideband, use the 4.9 sensor, and that worked immediately. I also wired it to go to the ECU Master so I can use that data in the system as well. That worked flawlessly immediately. So I know it's not the sensor itself because these are the same exact sensors. For some reason it just wasn't working, so that was unfortunate. So 2 major issues with the ECU Masters. I don't know if it's a software issue or what. So ECU Masters, great price point, runs the engine, but that's pretty much it. So the most common question I get is, what does it take to make it work in my fill in the blank? I compare it to the Ford Coyote 5.0 due to its size. This Mazda comes with 1.3 rotary. There's barely any space in it. You know, there's a bunch of folks who've done LS swaps in these, 1UZs from Toyota, the V8s in here. There's a couple other crazy swaps, but I mean, it definitely will fit. You just have to cut some things. So for the Mazda, we had to cut the hood to make it work. I had to cut the front radiator support a little bit to clearance for a radiator. The radiator I'm using is from a Mazda Miata. It's a 3-core. From there, I'm using the RX8 condenser, the Maserati AC compressor and lines welded to the Mazda fittings, so that way I have working AC. CD009 from a Nissan 350Z, G35, G37 will all fit, and the drive shaft is custom. I had Collins adapters actually make it for me. The turnaround time was like 5 days. I sent them the measurements, and the next day it was shipped. So it was super, super quick. Cost was relatively affordable from what I can find in this area. It was actually a little bit cheaper than most. Quality was great. Happy with it. Doesn't vibrate, so that's great. It was exactly what I needed. So if you need a drive shaft, definitely reach out to Collins Adapters or Collins Performance, but they do a great job. The rear end is a Mazda factory limited slip differential. Don't know what the power limit is. As long as I take it easy, it should be fine. Besides the engine, the adapter for the transmission, you have custom engine mounts, and then you have custom exhaust. The exhaust, factory exhaust, does not fit whatsoever in this engine. There's barely any space, honestly. So we had to make I made some log style manifolds, and typically weight seal like an LS. So that's what I needed to make it work. And then it's a single 3-inch exhaust to a dual Porter muffler set up in the back. Steering had to be extended and relocated, so it's pushed down just like you would on an LS swap. There's a bunch of kits out there you can buy, or you can make your own. I made my own just because I needed a little more than what the kits offered for spacing. And then the sway bar in the front, we had to make a custom one for that. So I had to go in and actually cut and extend it out a little bit, just so it would fit with the rack moved down. The rack does work. It's electronic power steering. The Mazda ECU, all it needs is a sensor for the crankshaft, which we retrofitted on this engine, as I showed earlier, just so it could basically sense an RPM signal to feed the fuel pump. Basically, it tells the car, hey, the engine's on. So everything else should work as factory. And then a coolant temp sensor for the fans. So you got the fans, everything else, the cluster, everything just functions off those two sensors, which is huge. Makes any swap fairly easy, and then you can run whatever ECU you want to run the engine. So there are 3 variations of this Maserati engine. There's a 4.2 dry sump system that has the red valve covers on it. You'll need external oil tank for that. Those are more common. There is a 4.2 wet sump that has blue valve covers, that has an oil pan basically. As long as you can make it fit, I definitely say go with a wet sump, just because there's less things to go wrong. You don't have to make a custom oil tank, so that's great to have. Power wise, it's fairly close, maybe a couple horsepower off, but I would say definitely go with the blue valve covers wet sump version if you can. If not, race car, go with a red valve covers. And then you have the 4.7, which is a little more rare. They're usually double the price of a normal 4.2. 4.7 is a wet sump. It comes in the Grand Sport or Grand Coupe 2013 up Maseratis. Some Quattroportes was an option, so you'll have a hard time finding them, and if you do, they're between $5,000 to $7,000 on the used market, compared to the 4.2 dry sump, which is between, I've seen it as cheap as like $1,500 and as expensive as $3,000. So it's a nice range. I'd say you'd get a good deal around $2,000 with around 80,000 miles. That's roughly what you'll see out there. That's a great deal. So scoop them up before they go up in price. I've seen a couple people start this project or this swap already. So definitely, it'll increase the price of these engines. What you'll need to retain from the factory Maserati engine is you'll need the factory flywheel. We need that because it has a ring gear on there, and that's like your crankshaft position sensor for the Maserati. It's a little weird. It's on the crank. It's on the flywheel, so you have to retain that, unfortunately. So if you have a project that you need an engine for, grab yourself a Maserati Quattroporte or Maserati Grand Sport Nissan 350Z transmission, and then buy the kit and you're good. Swap it in, make some mounts, exhaust, whatnot, and get your car running.